Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. Welcome to today's webinar titled What's New in HCL DFMPro in 2024. My name is Pooja Kulkarni. I'm a marketing manager at HCL. I'm the host and moderator for today's webinar. Our speaker for today's webinar is Priyanjal Joy. Priyanjal is a part of DFMPro product management team. He has an MBA in operations and marketing and completed his bachelor's in mechanical engineering from BITS Pilani, where he was a part of Baha SAE team. Priyanjal provides consulting solutions on the DFM space to the various industries globally. I would like to thank Priyanjal for being with us today. So before I hand it over to the speaker, let me share logistics of today's webinar. Webinar is of approximately 30 minutes. Your active participation is important throughout the session. I have kept everyone on mute to avoid background noises. However, enter your comments and questions in the question box throughout the presentation. Time permitting, your questions will be answered following the presentation. If time runs out before we can get to all the questions, we will make sure your answers are emailed to you. So with this, I will hand it over to Priyanjal to begin the presentation. Over to you, Priyanjal.
Thank you, Pooja. Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar to look at what's new in DFMPro in 2024. My name is Priyanjal and I'm part of the DFMPro product management team. Thank you for taking time out from your busy schedules to learn about the new features and enhancements in DFMPro. Several exciting improvements have been brought to the users with the recently launched versions of DFMPro across Creo Parametric, NX, SolidWorks, as well as CATIA V5. We have improved our core functionality and also certain usability aspects. We have introduced new rules and modules and supported the latest CAD versions. The agenda for today's webinar would be to go through a few key enhancements accompanied by related demos followed by a Q&A session as time permits. For each major enhancement, we will also have an explainer slide which would then be followed by a short demo to go through it. So without much ado, let's start with the list of enhancements. So the first enhancement that we'll look at is the review details. With this enhancement, we have provided a more structured mechanism to add and store review comments for DFMPro result instances. We will cover the new functionality implemented in DFMPro to remember the user inputs and mold face classifications across multiple runs and sessions. This would eventually help speed up the analysis time. There would also be the newly added die casting module as well as the multi-process analysis with assembly module that would be taken a look at. Next, we will talk about the enhancement to the Windchill integration of DFMPro. Now, reviewers can store their comments on the DFMPro results stored in Windchill without a need to check in the file. We'll also check at the recent VRM improvements as well as enhancements in DFX analytics. In this enhancement, we have improved the user experience for the review details functionality. This is how the review details window looks like when it's launched. An improved UI ability to reply to comments, stored user information along with a date timestamp provides more structure to the collaboration between designers and reviewers. The new UI is shown in the images. A meaningful review history will be maintained with this new feature. This time, let's go through the review details on a different CAD platform, say SolidWorks. So the analysis is complete and the recommendations are generated. Once the DFMPro results are generated, we can hover upon any instance in the instance details box. Let's go with the first instance itself. The second option is the review details button. Let's go ahead and open it. Now that the review details window is open, we have the option to make the following changes. We can take a snapshot of the component with the current instance highlighted for easier review. If not needed, that can be deleted. Similarly, the comments can also be added or deleted. We can click the add comment button to note down any required details which will be visible to all other stakeholders during design review later on. Let's go ahead and add an appropriate comment. Here we are adding a critical comment to let the later reviewers know that this is a instance which is critical for the success of the design. Having made that comment, let's close this window. Once the window closes, you can notice that the icon beside the first instance has changed. This is to denote that some review details information has been added to that particular instance. Let's go ahead and do the same for a second instance as well. We go ahead with the same processes, and in this, let's imagine that this is an instance which is not critical and can be ignored during later review. So consequently, we add a comment for that. Go ahead and close the review details window, and for this too, the icon for that instance has changed, and this information will be retained later on for every single review, whether it is imported or whether it is in the reports. As we already know, processes such as injection molding, casting, and die casting processes require a pulling direction as well as mold wall classification as inputs. DFMPro does provide these default pulling direction as well as mold classifications options. However, occasionally secondary pulling direction and reclassified mold faces are required. DFMPro allows additions and modifications to the pulling direction specified in the entity selection page that is shown in the screenshots here. Similarly, mold wall classification can be done by selecting the edit classification of mold faces checkbox at the bottom of the page. With this already in place, what we are providing this enhancement is that once these pulling directions and mold wall classifications are entered by the user, all inputs and modified mold classifications will be remembered for the next run. After a part modification, if the designer reruns the DFMPro analysis, all previous added inputs and classification of the mold faces will be remembered. This enhancement will undoubtedly make the injection molding, casting, die casting processes much more user friendly and faster. Benefits would also include improved software usability, reduced DFMPro input time, as well as reduction in the analysis time, thereby saving precious time for the designers. Okay, so we have opened SolidWorks for the demo. This is the injection molding part. We'll open the DFMPro window, and as soon as the DFMPro license is acquired, which can be seen below, we'll then go ahead and put in the user inputs. Yeah, it's acquired now. So we'll just put in the inputs and move to the next page, which is the entity selection page. Here the first is the primary pull direction. Let's go ahead and change that. Similarly, we'll go ahead and add some secondary pulling directions as well. Ideally, there should have been some cutouts for which the secondary pulling direction would have worked. But let's just go ahead and add two secondary pulling directions nevertheless. Now those two faces are added as the secondary pulling direction. Let's check the mold face classification checkbox and move to the edit mold classification page. Here, as you can see, there is core and cavity and faces in each of those categories. Correctly, there shouldn't be any side action, but just for showing, let's just add a side action in which phase 3 has been added. There is nothing added onto side action 2 or others, and let's just go ahead with the analysis. As expected, the analysis results are generated, and now if we go back to the inputs page, we can see that the faces arranged in each of the particular part pull direction and secondary pulling direction, as well as the ones added in the edit mold wall classification, would remain the same. If we go to the edit classification on mold faces page also, we can see that the faces selected in core, cavity as well as the side action would be retained as it was in the previous analysis. We'll just go ahead and rerun the analysis. The results would be the same, but this time around, let's just go ahead and maybe add a comment using the review details window. Once the comment is added, we'll close this and then export this particular result file. It will be exported in .dfmr format. Once exported, we'll close DFMPro window and relaunch. Yeah, we'll relaunch it. I'll just wait for DFMPro to acquire the license, and once license is acquired, we'll go ahead and import the DFMR file which we exported just a few seconds ago. Once imported, it will directly show the results, including the changes made in that particular instance 1 through the review details window. Similarly, we'll go to the inputs page. Here, as you can see, the part pull direction as well as the secondary pulling directions would be retained, and the mold wall classification also would be retained in each of the core, cavity as well as side action 1 groups. So in this manner, whatever selection is made in the first analysis would be retained and remembered by DFMPro for all subsequent runs of the analysis. DFMPro is seamlessly integrated with PLM software. When DFMPro is integrated with it, the DFMPro results as well as the reports are attached to the part revision after the part is checked or the results are exported. It was often observed that reviewers or manufacturing experts do not have full permission to access the PLM software. As a result, they can't modify the design or are not able to do a check-in into the PLM. Because of such limited permission, comments added by the manufacturing engineer or the reviewer are not directly saved into the PLM. However, with this new enhancement, reviewer as well as manufacturer comments will get stored in PLM without a model check-in permission. A reviewer can add the review comments reply to designer comments, generate reports, as well as export the results. DFMPro will automatically update the existing results file with the latest review comments. All the history of comments between the designer as well as the manufacturer will have been saved in the result file. Benefits for this include improved software usability, a strengthened DFMPro review process, as well as the benefits accrued from maintaining the review comment history. DFMPro has come up with a materials filter which pops up right within the rule configuration window when the hotkey is pressed. The changed UI for the configuration window for a typical rule is shown in the image attached. Using the hotkey, users can filter the configured material based on one's requirements. So this helps in easier configuration of the rule, reduce designer inputs in terms of clicks as well as entries made, and it also helps in pinpoint analysis results based on the selected materials. In an interconnected and complex manufacturing setup, each component may undergo several manufacturing processes before turning into the finished product. Different modules consider vastly different parameters within the component. As such, to improve the user's selection and analysis, profile execution as an option would be provided within the DFMPro window. This is how it would look like. Under the profile section, design engineers will have the option to select the specific process or module that they'd like to analyze the part. And with this, with a single click, users can have multiple inputs being selected automatically. The changes required to this will need to be made in the DFMPro settings window, which will have a slightly different UI as shown in this image. For a demo, let me just open the DFMPro settings window on Creo. Yeah, here it is. Once the enable profile execution checkbox is enabled in settings as shown, we can then close it and then load the part for the analysis. I'll just open a part. Yeah, so this is the part chosen for this demo. Next, we'll just go ahead and start DFMPro. Once DFMPro is launched, you can then see the changed UI where the user inputs were present earlier. You may also see that a new tab called Profiles is added at the top beside Inputs. Down below, below the Profiles area, we can go ahead and click on an appropriate profile for this particular part. Yeah, and once it is selected, we move directly to the entity selection page. No options or no selections have to be made in the user inputs page. It's all taken in within this one click. Once this is done, we can move ahead with the next inputs that are needed in terms of the primary or secondary pulling direction, as well as editing the mode wall classification or setting the secondary processes, so to speak. So the secondary process selection is just given at the bottom of the screen. Yeah. Here I select prismatic mill, and then we can just go ahead and proceed with the analysis. Within this enhancement, the earlier options, as you can see in the entity selection page, are retained. Only the selections that were needed to be made in the user inputs page have been reduced to a single click of a button. We also make selection in terms of the machine region, and once that is done for this particular part, we move ahead with the analysis. And once the results are loaded, we can clearly see that each module would also be shown separately with respect to the criticality of the rule. In this case, under the recommendations, you can see there are casting based recommendations and then milling based recommendations. And within each of them, the rules would be added in the decreasing order of their criticality, from critical to high to medium to low. And similarly, it is available for assemblies too, which we'll see in the next slide. What was mentioned in the previous slide about different modules being checked simultaneously during the analysis is now applicable for assembly module 2. With this particular enhancement, all checks applicable for an assembly, also including tubing and welding processes, can be executed in a single run, and all the analysis results can be reviewed together. Earlier, checks related to tubing and welding could only be checked separately. The benefits of this particular enhancement include reduction in the execution time and a combined results file for the complete assembly, enabling a quick review for all assembly specific recommendations. There have been enhancements made to VRM2. VRM is the Visual Rule Modeler, a tool which helps DFMPro users to create new rules within the DFMPro setup, but without any coding requirement. To ease the users in this feature, we have made improvements such as bulk import of data from Excel and bulk delete options. There are dialog box modifications made as well as assistance provided in terms of data correction options. Now let's imagine subject matter expert Rohan, who wants to create a new rule to check a particular parameter. After entering the details in the first page and the parameters and operators in the second page, this is how the last page of the VRM window looks like. Now within this area, users have the option for importing data from Excel. Similarly, options to delete multiple values and data correction assistance will be available to prevent any errors such as in the parameters, values, operators, etc. Can be prevented during rule creation. Now for the demo, let me just open up the rule manager. Okay. In this case, I have chosen the minimum wall thickness based on a wall height rule. To start with the rule configuration, we'll just double click on the rule and the rule configuration window opens up. As you can see, for this particular rule, there are 3 parameters in terms of the material, the maximum depth, as well as the minimum wall thickness. You can also see the operators attached for each of them, being the equal to sign, the range, as well as greater than equal to. Now let's just go ahead and look at the Excel file from which we need to import the particular data. That particular Excel sheet would have to have entries in the same number of columns as the number of parameters for this particular rule. In this case, it is 3. We'll just save the rule, go back to the rule configuration window, click on this button which helps open up and import data from the Excel file. select the recently opened file, and with that we can import multiple values directly onto the rule configuration window. Now, if the format in which the data entered would have been wrong, for example, in the maximum depth we have had a range operator. Uh, in this case, if we had entered some random letters or even just one number, then it would have failed and it would have highlighted the error in yellow. This would also help while uh, importing a huge number of values to find out which values are not input correctly and then to make changes accordingly. DFX Analytics is a one-stop solution to oversee the entire flow of the design and the review process and how it's been progressing with each iteration or each cycle. In this case, we have made some changes with respect to how the uh, comment section has been loaded, the information that has been provided, and the one-to-one mapping with the instances, as well as providing help with the effective design review. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. So for this, I have launched CATIA v5 and run the analysis for this selected part. Once the results have been loaded, you can see there have been some recommendations here. Let's just select a rule and go to the review details and add some comments for the same. Yeah, once it is added, we'll just add a second comment for the same. Now that we are almost done with the comment, we'll save it, close it, and then we'll go ahead with the second comment too. And let's go ahead and add a similar comment of uh, perhaps ignoring this particular instance. Having done that, let's also go ahead and ignore it. Now these changes have been made. We'll close DFMPro so that the data is then uploaded to the DFX Analytics database. So this is how the DFX Analytics page looks like, or specifically the design metrics tab of it. We'll select the part for which we analyzed currently and check the rule details. For the minimum internal corner radius rule, as we can see, the comments as well as the instances for this particular rule have been added with a one-to-one mapping. For instance, 1 and 2 with the respective comments, etc. Next, we have loaded the issue metrics tab. Here too, we'll go with the turning module and the minimum internal corner radius rule. Here, as you can see, the comments instances, we can see two instances where comments were added. And if we go ahead with the ignored instances, we have just one instance which was ignored, which was instance 2. Along with the speed of the DFMPro analysis, we also take pride in the fact that we provide support on the latest CAD platforms uh, in the shortest amount of time. All the latest CAD versions across NX, SolidWorks, Creo, and CATIA v5, which are mentioned on the screen, will be provided support or are already being provided support in the current releases. The team has also started work on supporting DFMPro within the 3D experience platform. You may get in touch with us through the email attached at the end of this presentation for any questions related to the same.
We are now open to questions. Please type your questions in the question box and we will take them one by one. We have received the first question. First question is, when will the DFMPro for 3D experience will be available for us?
Okay, so that's a great question. So development work on DFMPro support for 3D experience has just started. It is expected to be released early next year to the customers. So yes, please stay tuned about that through the DFMPro support portal.
Great. The second question we have received is, are there any new design rule checks added in the DFMPro in 2020?
New rule checks. The one word answer to that is yes. We have developed new rules as well as modified existing rules to significantly improve users' experience with DFMPro as a product. Let's take for an example the thread mismatch rule, which has been enhanced to include checks based on thread type, thread size, as well as thread pitch data. Or there is the fastener accessibility rule with a more advanced accessibility check. Similarly, several new rules are also added across the 4 CAD platforms on which DFMPro is supported. On a similar note, actually, support for new modules is also being added, such as die casting for NX, and multiple rules are added accordingly.
Okay. The third question we received is, what are the system requirements for installing and running the latest version of DFMPro?
Okay, in general, the system requirements for running DFMPro on your systems require about 16 GB RAM or more, minimum 4 GB of storage space. DFMPro works on Windows 11 down to Windows 7 too for some versions. Apart from these general requirements, you may require Microsoft SQL Server 2014 to 2022 versions, as well as .NET Framework 4.0 or higher, to successfully run the TFX server analysis. I hope that clarifies your question. Apart from that, for each release, the specific requirements are mentioned in the installation guides when you download the DFMPro software. So you can also get this information from there.
Yeah. We will take the last question now. The last question is, can you highlight any specific case studies related to DFMPro users?
Sure. So DFMPro has had several case studies over the years and across the breadth of the customers supported. These are spread across aerospace, healthcare, automotive sectors, and detailed case studies and white papers are provided in the DFMPro support portal. If you would like to check them out, you can. In fact, in the webinar recording that we will share with you all, we'll also try to attach the link for the case studies, which would be on the DFMPro support portal.
All right. Yeah. So thank you, Priyanjal. We are almost on time. We hope all you have enjoyed the webinar session. We will be sending a link to webinar recording in the next few days. If you have any questions, please write to dfmpro.marketing@hcl.com. I repeat, dfmpro.marketing@hcl.com. You can also visit